And today is the 7th of October 2025, and we're approximately around between 10 and 11 a.m. Last I checked on my watch, and I have to unburden myself as I do believe this is not a random dream, a random, a random vision that my mind conjured. I do believe that, God speaks through visions and dreams, and I have to share this. So last night, maybe around 3 a.m., between 2 a.m., 3 a.m., I had a dream, a vision, night vision, where I found myself, interestingly enough, I was in Palestine. I found myself in the Gaza Strip. And most of you have seen, the destruction, the chaos. That was a product of the aggression of the Israeli Defense Forces. The Israeli Defense Force, we have seen the destruction and the chaos that ensued after the bombings. They've completely reduced Gaza to rubble. And if we look at the pictures and the video footage of maybe like 3 years before this happened, we see a completely different landscape. And if we compare it with current footage and images now, we see that the whole Gaza Strip reduced to rubble. Now there are some buildings are unscathed, and this is what I saw in the dream. I saw certain buildings that were perfectly, they were untouched, and people were just going about their daily business. They were eating, drinking, and this really looked like the Gaza Strip, because I could see clearly the sea. It was on the coast, and I noticed the sea, and the people were just going about their daily lives, and suddenly I noticed all of these buildings. They started, to, I could see explosions. I could see like bombs reducing these buildings to rubble, and it was all sorts of explosions in all directions. It's like the place was bombarded. It was heavily bombed, and people who were just eating at like local fast foods, and they were eating like in cafes. It looked like Middle Eastern cafes. They were running in all directions. People were literally running for their lives, and bombs were going off in all directions. Horrific images where blood was just all over the road, and I could even see people's guts were all over the place, and it was a horrific scene. And there was this one particular scene in the dream where I saw a father, and he was sitting next to the bodies of his wife and children. They were literally murdered, and everyone was running during this whole chaos that was occurring. This man was crying and sitting next to the body of his wife and children. We started to look at each other intensely, and he spoke to me, and he said that his wife and children, he was crying, said his wife and children were murdered by his own people. And I was surprised because the bombing clearly was carried out by the Israeli defense force, the Israeli army. And this man said, his wife and children were killed by his own brothers. And I asked him, I said, but why? And he explained to me that they were trying to grab his phone, his cell phone, and an argument ensued, and they shot point blank his wife and children because he refused to give his phone, and he was just devastated. He was explaining that they're invaded, violently aggressed by the Israeli force, and his own brothers did that to his own family, murdered his own family. Video, and it's important because we're October 7th, 2025, and the likelihood of dreaming, receiving this vision on this special day can only come from God. And I believe that the interpretation of this dream is, if we don't have Jesus, if we don't have that blessed Spirit living in us, we will despair.
The bombs may have stopped falling, and a prisoner exchange between Israel and Hamas is underway. But in Gaza, a new kind of violence has erupted, not from the skies, but from within. On Sunday, deadly clashes broke out between Hamas and a powerful local clan, leaving at least 27 people dead. The confrontation took place in Gaza City's Sabra neighborhood. According to officials, the fighting pitted Hamas security forces against the Dogmush clan, one of Gaza's largest and most influential families. The Dogmush have a complex history, some members tied to Hamas, others to the Palestinian Authority, and a few linked to armed factions like Jaish al-Islam, which was involved in the 2008 kidnapping of Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit. Witnesses say the violence began after an outlaw gang allegedly killed members of Hamas's Qassam brigades. In response, hundreds of Hamas fighters stormed a residential block where Dogmush gunmen were holed up. By the end of the day, 8 Hamas members and 19 from the clan were dead. Among the victims was Salah al-Jafarawi, a 28-year-old journalist caught in the crossfire while covering the clashes. That remains unclear. While some reports suggest an Israeli link, the clan's leaders deny it. In fact, Nizar Dagmash, the clan's head in Gaza City, told the Los Angeles Times he refused Israeli offers to manage a so-called humanitarian zone, and that his neighborhood was later bombed. Still, tensions between Hamas and the Dagmash run deep, and such rivalries have flared into bloodshed before. This isn't an isolated case. Israel has long been accused of backing armed groups inside Gaza to weaken Hamas's control. One such group, the Popular Forces, led by Yasser Abu Shabab of the Terabin Bedouin tribe, is reportedly funded by Israel. They've been accused of looting humanitarian aid meant for Gaza's starving civilians. Another, the Strike Force Against Terror, led by Hussam al-Astal, a former Palestinian Authority officer, has also clashed with Hamas. Israeli media say al-Astal coordinates closely with Abu Shabab's militia. The fighting may have stopped for now, but Gaza remains a tinderbox. After 2 years of war and destruction, armed factions are re-emerging, vying for power and survival amid a devastated landscape. Hamas insists it has not deployed fighters to the streets. Meanwhile, Palestinians continue returning to the ruins of their homes, hoping for normalcy that never seems to arrive.
Unlike what people think of us, we are a people who support peace, and we love peace. We appreciate any efforts, whatever they may be, from any country, from U.S. President Donald Trump, from anyone. We thank all the countries that contributed to stopping the war. The Peace Summit in Sharm el-Sheikh, from its beginning to end, is to protect Israel only, because may God grant health and wellness to every young, resistant, and struggling fighter. They are not afraid for you or your people, they are afraid for the Israeli people, who they consider are oppressed, whereas Israel, is a colonial people, the same people who oppressed the Palestinian people and colonized their land.
Israel's war may have halted, but Gaza's wounds run deep. As aid trickles in and families search for what's left of their lives, new power struggles are unfolding, raising a haunting question. Will Gaza ever find peace, even after the war?
A chilling vision, the last moments before a street-side execution. Hamas fighters shooting members of a rival armed clan, bloodied bodies collapsing in the crowded street. As the fragile ceasefire holds, rival gangs are attacking each other and Hamas inside Gaza. Justin Salhani is a journalist based in Beirut.
What we know is that there have been some clashes on the ground. Some of these are between clans, big families that have their own political ambitions. Some of them have been accused of being backed by Israel.
Palestinian journalist Mohammed Shihada says the power vacuum is a direct result of the war in Gaza.
Israel had systematically targeted the local civil police, volunteers, civil society that tried to create any sort of rudimentary civic order and keep it in place.
This is inevitable.
Lawrence Pintak is a former Middle East correspondent. He says the rivals are nothing new.
They've always been there. They've cooperated with Hamas at times. They've clashed with Hamas at times. But Hamas was such an overriding force, it wasn't an issue.
On Sunday, hundreds of Hamas fighters attacked a block where the Dormush clan were holed up, killing 19 members.
It is a clan that has a number of people who span the political spectrum in Gaza. And so that means, they have members in Fatah, they have members in Hamas, and then they have other, members that have different political leanings.
Another faction is the anti-Hamas gang known as Popular Forces.
It has links to ISIS. The leader of the gang, Yasser Abu Shabab, was a convicted drug dealer who spent 8 years in prison before he escaped after October 7th when prisons were bombed or targeted. You have currently 4 gangs that are operating under the umbrella of the Popular Forces. All 4 are cultivated by the IDF.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu defended Israel's strategy of working with clans and gangs in June, saying they activated clans in Gaza that oppose Hamas in part to save the lives of Israeli soldiers. What do these clans get out of working with Israel?
Number 1, power. Number 2, a second chance. Come work with us and you will not end up in prison again. You will rule Gaza. Number 3 is finances, privileges, food, shelter, tents, all the things that the rest of Gazans are deprived of. So the privileges on offer were appealing enough for them, along with the promise of redemption.
And he explained to me that, they were trying to grab his phone, his cell phone, and an argument ensued, and they shot point blank his wife and children because he refused to give his phone, and he was just devastated. He was explaining that, they're invaded, the violently aggressed by the Israeli force, and his own brothers did that to his own family, murdered his own family.
As Hamas soldiers reassert themselves into daily life, observers do not expect the balance of power to shift. Can any of these rival militias or clans actually offer a serious threat to Hamas?
They do not represent any sort of rival to Hamas, because if you look at their numbers, Abu Shabab is only about 400 militants. With the three others, it's also in the dozens. So all of them combined would be less than 1,000. Hamas has an army of militants. The other aspect is that the gang members do not have the same level of military sophistication or training with weaponry or planning or tunnels or infrastructure that Hamas has in Gaza. Hamas has been entrenched there for 2 decades.
He says while Hamas's popularity is declining, it won't collapse until Israel leaves and Palestinian authorities take over.
It seems like they're doing this in order to either blame Hamas or transition into something new. And that's what we're going to talk about today as well. The obvious reality, a great article from Mondeweiss and others about how this seems to have been the plan. So first, the ISIS point, I think, is very important to understand. Now, I'll give you some of the ones I briefly pointed at in the last show. Drop site news, simply reporting another Palestinian journalist that was killed by one of these gangs. Now, I'm going to get into the verifiable evidence of this, not just because it's from corporate platforms, but because they've admitted it. Netanyahu, the rest, have publicly discussed this in the Knesset. I've said that many times. I pointed to it once when we first brought it up, but I think today it's important to make sure you see this and understand the verifiable nature of it. That they know what they're doing. They are arming ISIS-linked gangs. And I think provably for the effort of executing people, that they know what they're doing. They are arming ISIS-linked gangs. And I think provably for the effort of executing people.
And they shot point blank his wife and children because he refused to give his phone. And he was just devastated. He was explaining that, they're invaded, violently aggressed by the Israeli force, and his own brothers did that to his own family, murdered his own family.
But also ultimately transitioning into something different. Maybe for the ploy of pretending it's Hamas. It's just a thought I had, but we'll go through it. So my point is, this is one of these gangs that they're funding. Same gangs that were running the GHF. Well, they told you it was humanitarian. These are terrorists who are executing, raping. All of this has been even seen by doctors who were there reporting on this stuff. And so this is a journalist that was killed by them. And this was on the 12th, right? So clearly not a ceasefire if they're, at least from these groups, killing journalists. I argue that was by design. That was something that was ordered. If not, the gangs are killing people and Israel put them there. The truth is it's far more than just that as we get into those ceasefire violations, which are plenty. The idea of bombings as of today, killing families. We'll get to that. But as Ryan Grimm put out, this was on the 11th. This is a CBS report. Opponents say Netanyahu's decision to arm clans in Gaza. See, that's the sanitized mainstream version where they leave out. Oh, you look at that. I actually didn't even think they'd include that. It does say right there. But I still argue it's going to be a sanitized version of it. Transfers to criminal gangs in Gaza that he likened to the ISIS terrorist group. Okay, so that is sanitized. Not likened to. They're connected and they've admitted that. They're even proud. They're saying that admitting that is a national security thing. It's very interesting. Either way, I'm surprised they even put that there. But it says admitting they're arming these clans. That's a good thing to keep in your mind to help fight Hamas. Okay. So now they're creating sort of a back and forth, right? Which is what they've done in every circumstance with PA, with, the different groups they've set up as the division factor to manipulate the Palestinians, right? So he says, so we're talking about pro-Israel clans, Mossad affiliates. Yeah, I mean, think about how clear this is with the way they're framing it here. But they want you to forget the connection to the GHF, the fact that they're ISIS linked, they've completely openly discussed that, and now what's currently happening with the executions that are being done by them. All this whole thing has been this like disjointed and obvious from October 7th forward, and long before that. But something really did kind of shift after that, where it was desperate. But he says Israel's attempt to apply its divide and conquer approach to Gaza involved recruiting and arming ISIS-linked gangs and executing families that refused to go along. Now, and these are the things that historically they'd point to and say, look at what they're supporting, look at what Hamas is, look at what they're doing, and it's people that were working at the behest of something else, largely Israel and their division tactics and their genocidal mentality. It says, now with Israel's partial withdrawal, we are seeing the policy's desired outcome: more violence in Gaza and a divided population. Many are divided on the sense that they don't want to be executed by these roving gangs. And it says Israel should stop arming these gangs so a process of reconciliation can begin. Obviously, he doesn't want that, but national reconciliation is not his goal. Now, some brief information to keep in mind. This is Whitney Webb's article from 2017, Mint Press News. And this is not a secret conversation. This is an Israeli website that reported that ISIS commander turned out to be a Mossad agent. This is actually far more common than you realize. There's one that I can't really verify. I couldn't find the background on it. It's a clip that I played in the past where it's a guy who's being interrogated. I think it was in Libya, and he admits to being basically pretending to be an ISIS member, and he's actually in the Mossad. It's very common. Or the ADL pretending to be a Nazi in a Nazi march. That's Mordecai Levy. Look up his name. It's a very public case. This is not secret, guys. But the point is, Mossad pretending to be ISIS or Hamas or a Palestinian or any number of things, Antifa. Just think about this, and just intelligence or any number of, doesn't always have to be Mossad. It could be the FBI. They've done that plenty of times. But this is important. This is the actual article, by the way. What do you know? It looks like it was removed, as usual. Not surprising. But here's the report. A Mossad agent who served as an imam in the ISIS center in Libya was arrested. This is a different one. But this is mainstream media in Israel. And where was 2017, right there. So we also pointed in Syria when they allowed the al-Julani, the terrorist, al-Qaeda terrorist, to take over, or rather they gave him what they took over in Syria, and he put on a suit and they just ignored it. They removed his $10 million bounty and acted like it was all good, right? Despite all the people that have put their lives on the line or were killed, been publicly discussed. That's the guy right there we're talking about. We'll go into more in a second. Good article, by the way, to read the entire thing. It's very important to see. Now, first, this goes back to June 6, 2025. This is Mondoweiss. Inside the Hamas unit fighting Israeli armed gangs that loot, aid, and facilitate displacement in Gaza, right? So they're talking about Hamas units who are fighting the Israeli armed ISIS-linked gangs who are stealing aid. And this has been provable for quite a long time. Now, again, this is one you should read all the way through, just the parts I want you to see to start. The Israeli military is arming gangs to combat Hamas in Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu confirmed this, and this came out on June 6th. This is a Thursday in that time frame. He says the revelation comes to light after right-wing Israeli lawmaker Avigdor Lieberman accused Netanyahu on Israeli public broadcaster Khan yesterday of arming a gang of hundreds of men in Rafah as a counterweight to Hamas. Right at the time when they were pointing to things happening in Rafah, this is obvious, and that's why I started with the Haaretz article, because if it's shown you Mondoweiss, plenty of them would just go, "Oh, it's a fake story." No, it's very easy to prove. Later, Netanyahu officially confirmed the reports in a video posted on Twitter. He says, quote, "On the advice of security officials, we activated clans in Gaza that oppose Hamas." Why wasn't this reported broadly across the Western media? Well, you know why. It says, what's wrong with that? It only saves the lives of Israeli soldiers. Yeah, who cares? We're working with ISIS. We're trying to help everybody. It's really crazy how obvious it's been. I'll include that. It's in the article too, but I'll include that for you. It says, publishing this only benefits Hamas. Netanyahu added about Lieberman. So why would it benefit Hamas to point out that you're arming gangs? Wouldn't that be a public thing? You'd be going, yay, we're fighting terrorism? The weirdness about this, it speaks for itself. So showing this helping Hamas means that you're admitting that you're working with ISIS, and that works for them because you're going to claim we're the bad guys. Well, guess what? Netanyahu, you are the bad guys, whether you think Hamas is too. It says now Israel openly admits to backing and arming Abu Shabaab's group, which is in effect an open admission that it has been backing at the looting of food aid meant for Gaza's starving population. Exactly. Here's Times of Israel. Israel providing guns to Gaza gang to bolster opposition to Hamas. Now, this is all important just to make it clear that that is something they're claiming. But let's get into the meat of the conversation about what this gang actually is doing. Now, the great discussion Robert and I had back on June 30th was about this guy in particular, plenty of other things. But we got into this really important point about these ISIS-linked gangs and how long it's been going on. You can watch that. This is Mouin Rabbani saying, this is Yasir Abu Shabab. He is a convicted drug smuggler. Isn't it perfect? As they're screaming about drug trafficking, and the guy they're literally allowing to do this, that Israel and the U.S. are working with, is a famous drug smuggler convicted for it. And open links to ISIS as they claim Trump's defeated ISIS 75 times. It says Israel arms and protects Abu Shabab and his fellow gangsters. Oops, hit that. And his fellow gangsters, directs them to participate in GHF massacres and provides them with the cover they require to loot aid and sell it at exorbitant prices in the Gaza Strip. Israel sucks at apartheid. Very interesting. Now, WikiLeaks came out on the 1st of June. All of it's been there the entire time, which is just what I'm saying. So the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is just a disgusting name for these terrorists that are killing people, is financially backed by Israel's Mossad. We told you this at the time. So there is another overlap just to recognize the fake. They set up like this fake group that they also funded, which was another mechanism through which they were funding these gangs. And it says the GHF was approved by the Israeli government to begin distributing food. They ultimately killed a lot of people.
And they shot point blank his wife and children because he refused to give his phone. And he was just devastated. He was explaining that, they're invaded, they're violently aggressed by the Israeli force, and his own brothers did that to his own family, murdered his own family.